Heijin had always been a stubborn soul, a trait that had defined him for as long as anyone could remember. It was a part of his charm, his drive, his very essence. But he never, not in a million years, imagined it would be the thing that pushed Sue away. He never expected Sue to actually leave. It all started so small, so insignificantly. A careless text message seen out of context. A whisper of a rumor, started by someone who didn't matter, but it spread like wildfire. And then, the misunderstanding. A simple, stupid misunderstanding that festered because neither of them had the courage to confront it. It grew from a tiny crack into a vast, yawning chasm, a gulf so wide that neither of them knew how to cross it. And now, here they were, on opposite sides of a divide they had created themselves. Sue stood by the edge of the Han River, the relentless rain soaking through his thin jacket, plastering his hair to his forehead. Each drop felt like a tiny, cold needle against his skin, a stark contrast to the burning ache in his chest. His heart wasn't just aching, it was breaking, shattering into 1,000 pieces with every shuddering breath he took. He watched the dark, swirling water, the city lights blurring into a watercolor painting of sorrow. He had come here hoping for clarity, for an escape, but all he found was a reflection of his own inner turmoil. He felt a presence behind him and didn't need to turn to know who it was. The air shifted, heavy with unspoken words and shared history. Heijin approached, his own clothes soaked through, the cold seeping into his bones. But it was a different kind of chill that held him frozen in place, a few feet away from the man he loved. Hesitation. It was a paralyzing force, a cocktail of fear, regret, and a blinding frustration with himself, with the situation, with the universe. He saw Sue's slumped shoulders, the picture of utter defeat, and it was a knife to his own heart. I thought you understood me, Sue finally whispered, his voice cracking, barely audible above the patter of the rain. It was a plea, a question, a final desperate reach across the chasm. I do, Heijin said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. But his eyes, they betrayed him. They told a different story entirely, a narrative of fear of saying the wrong thing, regret for everything he hadn't said, and frustration that he couldn't just rewind time. He wanted to run to Sue, to hold him, to promise him everything would be okay. But the words were stuck. I can't fix everything right now, he stammered, his voice raw. Not like this. It was the truth, but it was the wrong truth. It was an admission of failure. At his words, what little strength Sue had seemed to vanish. His shoulders slumped further. Then maybe... Sue's voice was hollow, devoid of hope. Maybe it's too late. And in that moment, under the indifferent gaze of the city, they both knew it was. It was too late. With a final heartbreaking silence, they turned away from each other, their backs becoming smaller and smaller as they walked separate paths into the pouring rain. Sometimes love, even a love as deep as theirs, isn't enough to save two stubborn hearts from themselves. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, a different story was unfolding. As chaos and heartbreak swirled around them, Yunho and Taemin remained an island of steadfast calm. Their bond, already strong, seemed to grow deeper with every hardship they witnessed in their friends' lives, a testament to their unwavering commitment. One night, they found themselves on a quiet rooftop, the sprawling city lights twinkling below like a fallen constellation. The air was cool, the noise of the streets a distant hum. Taemin laughed, a light, carefree sound that cut through the night. He reached out, gently brushing a stray lock of hair from Yunho's forehead. You know, Taemin said softly, his voice full of warmth and a quiet pride, we survived them all the drama, all the storms. Yunho smiled, a genuine soul-deep smile that reached his eyes. He leaned into Taemin's touch, finding his center, his home. "We did," he agreed, his voice a low murmur. "And I never want this to end." There was a vulnerability in his words, a raw honesty that made Tamon's heart swell. In response, Tamon leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't a passionate, desperate kiss, but a gentle press of lips, a soft promise, a seal against the chaos of the world. It was a kiss that said, "You are safe with me." Here, on this rooftop with each other, they had found more than just love. They had found joy in the simple moments, and a profound sense of safety and belonging. They had built a rare sanctuary in a city that never stopped moving, a quiet harbor where they could always find their way back to each other. As the weeks bled into a month, the seasons began to shift, and with them, the emotional landscape of their circle of friends. Jin and Minho, who had faced their own fracture, were slowly, cautiously, rebuilding what had been lost. Their healing wasn't in grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was in the small moments, the quiet affirmations of their bond. It was in a hand that lingered just a second too long on a shoulder, a silent message of support. It was in shared, easy laughter that once again filled the space between them in the university cafeteria. It was in the late-night texts that were no longer filled with apologies, but with silly memes and plans for the next day. It wasn't perfect. Their connection still bore the faint scars of what they'd been through, but it was real. It was theirs, and they were nurturing it back to health, one small moment at a time. Heijin, however, was not healing. He carried the memory of Sue in his heart like a ghost, a constant, silent companion. He went through the motions of his life, classes, rehearsals, nights out with friends, but there was a hollowness to it all. There were no more words exchanged between them. No late-night calls, no accidental meetings, just a profound, deafening silence. Yet Sue's presence lingered. Every melody Jin wrote, every chord he played on his guitar seemed to echo the sorrow of what they had lost. His music became a lament, a beautiful, heartbreaking soundtrack to a love story that had ended not with a bang, but with a quiet, regretful whisper in the rain. Some love stories don't end with a happily ever after. They end with the heavy weight of memory and a longing that never quite fades. Through it all, Yunho and Taemin flourished in their quiet world. Their love story wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a steady, warm glow. They became the silent anchors for their friends, a safe harbor for anyone seeking advice or just a moment of peace. They listened without judgment, offering comfort and perspective, witnessing the relentless drama of life unfold around them without ever being pulled under by its current. They were the constants in a world of variables, a quiet reminder that even when everything else falls apart, true love, the kind built on trust and understanding, can and will endure. They were the living proof that happiness wasn't just a destination, but a quiet, shared journey.